Hello AS English students. This video will serve as a quick revision of the different text types that you could come across in your AS English exam. So, based on the syllabus that they give us, you could come across the following forms of text in your exam: advertisements, brochures, leaflets, editorials, news stories, articles, reviews, blogs, investigative journalism, letters, podcasts, autobiographies, biographies, travel writing, diary, essay, scripted speech, narrative writing, and descriptive writing. We're going to be going over the purpose, audience, style, tone, register, syntax, common lexis, format, mood, tense, common devices, and paragraph usage in each of these. The important thing to remember, though, is that very rarely in English are things constant. So even though we may be going over the common lexis for a particular text format, it doesn't mean that you'll always have that kind of lexis. There are often exceptions. For example, if you were to write a review, there's very often descriptive language that's being written, but not always. So it's important to remember that these are not rules. These are just common things to keep in mind when you're writing a commentary, things that you can comment on and things that you can notice. And it's also just good to know these sorts of things for when you yourself write these forms of language, that you know then what style to adopt and how to nail that particular text format. Okay, so we're going to start right at the top with advertisements. The purpose of an advertisement is to promote a product or service. It's written by a business to their customer base or to potential customers to get them to buy something. And so the audience is customers. It's people that they're trying to sell something to. So the style of it it's often written in a manner that's very catchy. It's very memorable. It's eye-grabbing because that ties into the purpose. It's designed to grab the eye of the customer or potential customer and get them to buy the product. The tone of the writer is generally very enthusiastic. It's very energized. If an advert were to be dull or drab, people wouldn't want to buy the product. And so you really probably have the cliches in your mind of when you hear an advertisement, it's chipper, it's chirpy, it's enthused with excitement. The register varies. We get ads that are more formal. If it's a very prestigious or premium product, it's likely to be, the register will be formal. If it's a sort of mass marketed product that everyone can buy, the language may be more informal. They may adopt an informal register, and it may be more sort of conversational and chatty. The syntax, we're generally going to have very short, memorable, catchy sentences that stick out in your mind. The lexis is going to be overall very positive. They're going to want you to associate the positive lexis with the positive features of their product or service. We're also going to see lots of sort of slogan-esque language. So lots of little catchy little sentences filled with memorable sort of one-liners that stick out in the customer's mind. Because if you can get it to stick out in the customer's mind, that means that they're going to think about your product. And if they think about your product, they're more likely to buy the product. The layout varies, but generally what we see is that there's going to be a heading for this piece of writing, and the heading also needs to be catchy. It needs to be eye-grabbing. Sometimes there may be some sort of fun play on words to make the reader laugh. And we're also going to see sort of much chattier language, and it's going to be broken up into sort of shorter paragraphs, maybe some bullet points. The layout needs to be fun and easy to digest. So if an ad were to be in a newspaper, for example, that someone would be able to read over it quickly with ease, and all the important bits would stick out in their mind. Devices, there may be some metaphors, some similes that tie into the positive lexis that they're trying to get across to the reader. So, for example, if they're selling a new smartphone, they may say, a beautiful new slim iPhone that can sneak easily into your pocket. That sneak is a metaphor, it's personification, but it's being used to describe the slimness then of the device. And then lastly, like we said, paragraphs, generally very short, very digestible. The main point of an ad, it's got to be easy to digest, easy to read, easy to get into the mind of the customer and get them to then buy the product. Okay, moving on. Brochures. Brochures and leaflets are very similar. The main distinction is that brochures are almost like a form of advertisement. It's promotional. It's trying to get you to buy a product. Leaflets, however, aren't always promotional. They can, instead of trying to buy something, they may be for like an awareness campaign or to promote other social issues rather than trying to get someone to buy something. But the way they look in the real world is like it's a piece of paper that you'd hand out to someone. So you may have a brochure in a dentist's office for like a brand new car, but you may have a leaflet for a Save the Rhinos campaign. So like we said, the purpose is to persuade the reader, either to purchase something or to take action in some or other campaign. And the audience of these two texts varies. For a brochure, it's potential customers, people that they want to buy their thing. For leaflets, it's either potential customers or it's people that they think would be able to partake in this particular campaign. The style of these is going to be similar to an advert because again, it's persuasive. So you want it to be memorable. You're wanting to catch the reader's attention and draw them in. The tone for a brochure, very similar to an advert, if not exactly the same. But for a leaflet, it's not always going to be positive. For example, for a Save the Rhinos campaign, it may not be positive. In fact, it may actually be negative. It's drawing attention to maybe the violence against rhinos, or a leaflet for domestic violence issues. So the tone of the piece is always going to tie into the main idea that they're trying to get across. The register, it varies. Depends on the idea that they're trying to get across, depends on the thing that they're going to try and sell. The syntax, same as an advertisement. Short sentences, very catchy, memorable. The lexis, same, depends on the idea that they're trying to get across. It may be, in the case of a leaflet, it may be grim and sort of like dark, or it may be uplifting. Hey, we all need to recycle to better our neighborhoods. Or it may be, we need to recycle because we are destroying the planet. So it depends on the ideas that you're being asked to write on. The layout for both of these, similar to an advert. Generally, you're going to have a main heading and very short paragraphs and potentially lots of subheadings as well. Subheadings are a really good way in a leaflet or a brochure of breaking the information up in a very digestible way. So that, okay, here's where we're outlining the problem, here's where we're outlining the solution, what we do, how to contact us. So it's broken up so that people can easily navigate in the text to the information that is the most important to them. It may also have graphics, so pictures and that type of thing, but you're unlikely to get that in the exam, and you're definitely not going to be expected to draw something. The mood of the leaflet or brochure also depends on what is being promoted, what is being sort of drawn to. Again, if it's negative, it may be dark, it may be grim. If it's a brochure, it's an advertisement, it's trying to be happy, a happy mood, a very excited mood. Moving on to the devices that we often see in these. Same as an advert. Whatever we've said for an advert, just kind of apply that. Paragraphs also very short, very condensed, very very digestible. Okay, let us move on to news stories. Okay, the purpose of a news story is to give an account of an event that has occurred. Okay, in some of the past papers, it may be Usain Bolt winning his first gold medal. It could be a house burning down in a neighborhood. It could be some sort of scientific breakthrough. All of those are news stories because the purpose is to convey something that has occurred. And so the audience varies because there's different people that want to hear about different things. For the house burning down, the audience is the people in that neighborhood. For a scientific breakthrough, it may be a sort of a global audience because everyone could be affected by this. For Usain Bolt winning his first gold medal, it's got quite a broad audience, but particularly it may be people who are more interested in sports. So what is being written directly affects the audience that it is being written for. The style of news stories is very often it's an account, so it's a little bit detached. It's not an emotional style of writing. It's very matter of fact. It's just sort of going through the events. As a result of that, it's very often, in fact, if not always, written in third person. So you're describing the events sort of from a distance without you yourself as the writer sort of being involved. So instead of it being, oh, I was at the house when it was burning down and I saw this and this, it would be, the house burned from 9 o'clock in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. So it's third person. You're not involving the writer at all. The tone is also going to be neutral. It's often going to be detached from what's being written because it doesn't involve the writer as much. However, again, like I said at the start of the video, that's not always the case. You will sometimes get news stories where the tone may be happy, it may be energized. An example, the news story being written about Usain Bolt winning his first gold medal, that may have a more excited tone to it, but it's always a little toned down. It's always professional because news stories are often published in newspapers or published online, and so it's a formal publication. It's a formal piece of writing, which leads us nicely into the register. It's a formal piece of writing. Okay, it's going to be officially published, so we tend not to use contractions. We don't say can't, we say cannot, or so no contractions, and also no use of colloquial language. We keep things very professional. The syntax varies, but it's often easy to read. People want to get the information as sort of as digestible and as quickly as they can. They want to be able to read over it with ease. You're not writing to sort of paint a picture. You're not writing to sort of elicit an emotional response. Remember, the purpose is just to give an account of an event. So the syntax will also then support that. It supports the purpose. It's just going to be an account. So very often we'll get simple sentences rather than complex or compound sentences. The lexis will be straightforward. We're not going to get complicated vocabulary in a news report very often. It'll be what we call high frequency words, in other words, words that we use day to day, very commonly used words, because the audience is often quite broad. You want anyone to be able to pick up the news story and, oh, okay, that and that happened. Oh, that's how the house burned down. Oh, interesting. Which means it includes people with very extensive vocabularies, and it includes just day-to-day people that want to read the story. The format needs to have a headline. Okay, good news story always has a great headline, and it's got to be, again, eye-catching so that people who are reading through the newspaper see the headline. House burns down on 5th Avenue, whatever. That's actually a bad one. It should be more eye-catching than that. House of 5 burns down. That's also a bad one. But you get the idea. You want to be able to read through the newspaper and you see it and you immediately want to start reading it. So we've got the headline, and then each of the paragraphs are relatively short. It's not a rule, it's just sort of a trend that you tend to see. Your opening paragraph is going to give an overview of the particular event that you are describing, and then after that opening paragraph, you're going to paragraph by paragraph give an account of what exactly happened, and your concluding paragraph will generally refer to the future, what is going to happen. So if we take the house burning down example, opening paragraph is going to be on Tuesday, the 5th of September, a house on the corner of 5th Avenue went up in flames after a family left the gas stove on. Okay, so it's all one sentence, and it's just giving an overview, then gives an outline of the events that happened, and then concluding paragraph may be something like, the family plans to rebuild the house 2 weeks from now. So looking sort of to the future, so that then your readers can expect almost maybe a follow-up news story on what has happened since. Okay, the mood, not really there. Okay, if it's a somber event, if it's a sad event, there may be a sad mood. It may be appropriately somber, but not very emotional. Remember, we write news stories in a very detached sort of way. We're outlining the events just so that the reader can read them. We're not trying to make them feel any particular way. We're just laying out the events as is. So there's the mood maybe there, but sort of a little bit in the background. The tense, like we said, always third person. Devices, very light on devices, guys. It's not a descriptive style of writing, very clinical style of writing, very professional. So not go easy on your similes and metaphors and other figurative language. And that about does it for our news stories. Okay, our next one is articles. Okay, articles, the reason that we write articles is to explore an issue. So as a news story is looking at giving an account of an event, an article isn't about an idea that you are then exploring. So the purpose, to explore an idea. Sometimes it's to persuade the audience of a point of view within a particular idea. For example, if you were to have an article, you could just have a straightforward article about the effect of the use of the internet on young minds. A persuasive version of that, though, could be, don't let young people have a large amount of access to the internet because it could negatively impact their minds. So it can be informative in its purpose, but it could also be persuasive. It could also just be more on the entertaining side of things, but that's never its primary purpose. People don't write articles to entertain people. They write articles to inform people or persuade people, and then as a secondary purpose, it may just be entertaining because it's nice to rather read an entertaining article than a boring one. And so the audience is going to be people that are interested in the idea that you're talking about, but it's also affected by where the article is published. So if it's an article in a school magazine, the audience is going to be school children, but if it's an article published on a website, it's going to be a much broader audience. So where it is published and what you are talking about directly informs who the audience is going to be. The styles of articles vary greatly. Sometimes they're very personal. Sometimes it's someone chronic, sort of detailing something that's a personal experience that they went through, and then exploring the ideas in light of their personal experience. Sometimes they're way more detached, and they're talking about things in a very abstract way and not involving themselves as much. But the manner of writing varies greatly depending on the subject of the article and depending where it is going to be published. The tone also varies greatly, depending on the outlook of the writer. So if it's an article about something very serious and the writer's trying to persuade the audience to take this issue more seriously, the tone may then be more serious. The tone may be quite negative. It might be very pessimistic a bit. So yeah, what they're writing about is going to inform the way that the writer sounds. The register also varies greatly, but the main thing that affects the register, whether it's formal or informal, is your audience. It is where the article is being published, and as a result, who then is reading it. So a school magazine article, if it's sort of talking about an issue that affects school kids and it's written for sort of school-age children, it may lean more on the informal side. to an extent. You obviously don't want to include too much colloquial language that it just reads like a text message or like a conversation with your mate, because that's not appropriate for a school magazine article. But it may sort of be more chatty and engaging. An article published in like an official publication or a newspaper, however, may be far more formal. Not always, though. It depends what you're talking about. If it's an article talking about how more and more young people are choosing not to have children, for example, and the writer is including their own experiences, that may be more informal. It may be more personal. So think about what they're writing about. Think about where they're coming from. Think about who the audience is, and all of those things are going to affect then the register of the text. The syntax is going to vary for effect. So as a good rule of thumb, short sentences for a dramatic effect, for emphasis. What particularly they're emphasizing depends on the text, and sort of longer sentences to create a sense of variety and diversity. That's sort of a rule of syntax that you can kind of keep in mind and then apply to any given text. The lexis is going to fall within the particular field that the writer of the article is talking about. So if they're writing an article talking about biodiversity, then they're going to draw from the lexical field of biodiversity. They're going to mention plants, organisms, ecosystems, other words that are biodiversity related. If it's a sports article talking about more and more sport people using performance enhancing drugs, then it's going to draw from the lexical field of sports, and it's going to mention bats and balls. And I'm not a sport guy, so I don't know what words they'd use, but you get the idea. The layout is going to support the exploration of ideas. So you're always going to have a heading in an article. Same reason that you always have a heading, so that people look at it and be like, oh, that's what it's about. It's eye-catching, and then they want to continue reading. Your paragraphs are there to explore different aspects of the particular idea that the writer's talking about. So paragraph 1 is generally, as always, an introduction to the idea, and then the different continuing paragraphs are exploring different sides of that idea. You might have a paragraph that's including some quotes from experts. You might have another paragraph that's including some statistics. You might have another paragraph that's talking about personal experience of the writer. But it's broken up into the different sides